Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to today's CA PPM community webcast on resource management, presented today by Dave Sprague from the product management team. A couple of housekeeping items. You can ask a question at any time, put it in the Q&A tab. We'll get to those questions at the end, but you're welcome to put it in at any time. Just be sure you ask the question of everyone. Also, we are recording today's session, so all lines are muted, so please don't unmute your line so we don't get any background noise. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dave.
Hey, thank you, Matt. Welcome, everyone. As Matt said, today's focus, sorry, Chris. As Chris said, today's focus is going to be on staffing or resource management. I often get questions as we're going through the demonstration, what PPM release are you showing here? So I will be showing release 15.4.1, which was released in early June. Again, the focus is going to be on staffing. I'm going to talk about two roles or two personas, one Dana, the project manager, and one being Mark, the resource manager. As I get into this, I want you to be on the lookout for capabilities that show off the ease of use, how these particular personas navigate through their tasks that they want to accomplish. And I also want you to look at tools that help in particular, the resource manager focus on the task at hand and primarily monitoring and eliminating bottlenecks. So a couple things I'd like you to be thinking about as we go through this. So I'm going to start. I've logged in as Dana. You can see here in the upper right, I've got Dana. So I'm now as the project manager. This is my landing page as Dana. That I see all the projects for which I am responsible for as a project manager. That's typically the landing page for a given user. But what we're going to do is we are going to jump into the staffing area of the product. So I'm going to go ahead and just click staffing. And Dana has permissions to access this area, number one. And the staffing capability, or this area of the product, provides a single location to view and make changes to resources and their investment or project allocations. The staffing uses the allocation methodology. And right now we're looking at resources. So here's a list of resources that Dana has access to. It just happens to be filtered by a particular resource manager, Mark, that I discussed a second ago. And so we're looking at their resources and their investment allocations. So with the use of colorization, right off the bat, Dana has visual indicators to help her understand where there are resource bottlenecks, right? Green is good, red is bad, essentially over and under allocation. So green is, these particular resources are under allocated, and red means that they are over allocated. So real quick, I know where I've got to focus as a user here. Dana's permissions will limit or control the resources and investments for which she has access and can make changes. Let me switch views here. I'm going to come into the upper left of the page, and I'm going to the investment perspective. Sometimes marketing folks refer to this as I to R, investments to resources. Prior view, R to I, resources to investment. So here we are in our investment view. So as a project manager, Dana has a single location to view all the projects for which she is responsible. So straight away, one page, these are all the projects that Dana is responsible for. She doesn't have to go into individual projects to view and make changes she's managing. She's got it all right here. So one thing I want to do as Dana is open Eclipse. I just click that control there. And now I have information at my fingertips to help me as Dana understand who's allocated to this project. In other words, who's working on my project? Project managers ask that question all the time. Who's working on my projects? And how much are they allocated? So immediately I have that information at my fingertips. And again, Dana's individual permissions are limited or kind of control the resources and investments that she has access to and the changes she can make. So whether Dana is managing projects or a resource, this is a single view or location to come to view and manage changes to resources and her investments. So I'm going to switch back to the resource to investment view or the resources view. I switched back here to view, resource bottlenecks. If you have an organization that's kind of an open organization from a structure perspective or responsibility perspective, Dana can manage resource staffing and hard or soft book the resources depending on our permissions. You don't have to use soft booking, but it's there, and you do have the ability to use it if you want. So I will dive into more details here. So what I'm going to do real quick is log in as Mark as our resource manager. Let me come back in. So it's Mark, if you have an organization that leverages resource managers, now I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about, as I said, Mark, the resource manager. And depending on his permissions, Mark may have limited project access, knowing that he's going to be focusing on resources and staffing responsibilities. So here I am, Mark, I'm at my landing page, right? Now I'm going to go into staffing. So again, I'm going to start with our resources view. Now notice this is the same view that Dana was able to see, but this is now displayed for Mark from the resource manager perspective. Again, just like Dana, Mark's permissions limit or control the resources and investments for which he has access and can make changes. So let me give you a quick tour here. In the upper portion of the view is all of Mark's resources. I've added a filter here, more on filtering in a moment, but I filtered this based on Mark. So these are, who's on my team and what are they working on? Common questions that are challenging to answer, but it's very simple with this view. These are all of Mark's resources. He's been identified as the resource manager at the resource level. So I see all my team members, and at a very high level, I see their allocations across a certain time frame here. Let me expand one of these guys. I'm going to look at Alex. That's our specific resource. Mark also can say, answer that question, what are my resources working on? So these are all the investments to which Mark is allocated. Right? And I can click through each one of these, and I can see now he's got three projects that Alex is allocated to across this time frame. Let's move down to the lower portion of the screen here. These are role requests. Both of these views are filtered, for Mark, right? So these are all Mark's role requests, and these are all Mark's resources. Again, more on filtering in just a minute. So role requests come in from various project managers. During our conversations with customers, project managers typically know who they want to request roles from. So the project manager, during that role request process, targets Mark in this case. And so now I can see here exactly all the role requests, that are coming directly to me. This is basically my to-do list, right? These are things that I need to focus on as soon as possible for the various project managers that have been reaching out to me via the system. So let me draw into one of these role requests here. There's for a QA role, right? These are two investments where a QA role is being requested by a project manager. Additional conversations we've had with customers told us that project or resource managers, they know their team, and they want that flexibility to staff whomever they believe is right for the role. So Mark's going to go through an effort here to staff this role request or this project called Streamline Processes. You'll notice right away that there's this blue icon here. That indicates that there's a conversation going on. Conversations are capability that are throughout the application, so I'll show you real quick here. It helps Mark in the context of his work at the moment. So I'm going to click on this entry here. It's going to bring up a flyout. And before I go ahead and staff this, I better take a look at this conversation. So I'm going to click on the tab over here, and this is coming in from Dana, our project manager. She's basically looking for someone that, you know, they want on the project from start to finish, and they also want somebody that is familiar with our documentation tools and can actually write documentation. So I'm going to get back to Dana here. Dana, picture there. And oops, one. I'll staff this as soon as possible. And we'll go ahead and send this to her. So Dana, just as an aside on the behavior of conversations, Dana will receive an alert via a bell icon. So here's our bell icon up here. So as I'm in my application, regardless of where I am working, the bell icon will light up. And so in this case, Dana on the receiving end, it'll light up. And she can continue to have that dialogue in the context of the particular staffing request here. Alternatively, Dana, if email is in use, email can be a way in which this information is also distributed. So I would get an email and I would see that. I would see the information coming back. So real quick here, as I look at, I don't have any new notifications, but these are my prior notifications where folks have mentioned me as an individual, or perhaps I was part of a team. So I can see here that there's one here from Dana, since I work with her all the time. Here's another one, another example where she said, hey, Mark, you know, we're going to need someone for a particular start date, et cetera. So right away I know what she's looking for. There's the investment, the dates of the allocation, and if I want to, go directly to that area and begin, you know, working that issue. So really super handy way to have the dialogue, whether you're working directly in the particular area or not. All right, so let's continue. So I've read the note here from Dana. I'm going to go back to my detail tab here. And I'm going to go ahead and staff this with a QA person. So I can see here that they're looking for the role request of the QA person. So I'm going to come in here, and I can see, you know, a list of names that I can choose from. These are folks that I have permission to view, but I need a QA person. So I'm going to start typing in QA, and that's going to filter down, right, the roles, the people and their roles. So I'm going to go ahead and select Grace and just confirm that allocation. And so you'll notice that it disappeared from this role request area, and it has now been staffed. So we finished that one. So as I mentioned, this is essentially the work area that I, as a resource manager, kind of focus and, you know, help my fellow project managers staff their various projects. Let me talk a little bit more about the filtering capabilities. So down here in the role request area, I filtered that on resource manager Mark, but I may want to do a little bit further filtering. I just want to kind of focus in on a particular investment. So these are all the investments that I have access to. So I'm going to type in, you know, I know I have one here that I just want to focus on. This is TMDM. I didn't do it right. Okay, so I could have selected multiple investments to filter, but now you can see I still have 4 role requests here, but they're for all the same investment. So that's good. I filtered that down. As I click on this, the flyout comes up, right? So these are all the open requests. As I click through each one of these, you see the panel on the right-hand side remains open, but it refreshes to keep me, you know, in context of the particular role request. So the goal here is to make this process very easy and reduce the number of clicks for Mark as the resource manager. I'm going to go ahead and, you know, I could, if I wanted to, I can reduce that filter. I could reduce all those filters. So I'm going to see, multiple role requests here across the organization. But I'm going to go ahead and add that filter back for myself, Mark, the resource manager, keep that kind of focused on things that I care about. Okay, so let's, as I mentioned before, depending on your organization, resource staffing can support hard or soft booking of resources, right? So let's go ahead and get focused on that now. So I'm going to go ahead and click the maximize to remove the panel, the request panel from my view, and I'm going to come back and focus on my resources here. And we'll talk about hard soft booking and some of the visual indicators here that help me understand what's going on with that. The darker shade indicates that there's soft booking, right? So right away I can tell there's a certain number of requests that have come in for Alex in particular. I'll expand him. He's got, again, these are the 3 projects or investments that Allocate is allocated to. But in this case, 2 of them are soft booked. So as I said, you don't have to use soft booking, it's there. But this is an example of a project manager that searched out Alex and booked Alex on these particular investments, but that person didn't have, and probably Dana didn't have the permissions to just go ahead and hard book Alex. So it shows up here as a soft book, and if I go into my personalized online shopping, so I as the resource manager can go, yeah, it looks like it's all good. I can just convert that. Since Alex works for me, I can just convert that to a hard book, and we're good to go. We've kind of closed the loop there on that request from Dana for that particular person versus the roles that were down at the very bottom. So like I said, you don't have to use soft booking. It's there if you need it. The key thing here is that there's visualization, like you see these pie charts, to help you determine if there are issues that you need to address. In the case of Alex Bergman, I see that there's 1 remaining soft book, but maybe I don't have to worry about that right now. I don't have to worry about his over allocation just yet for July and August. All right, so I'll deal with that later. So I'm going to come back and just kind of close out my view. So, we're kind of going through a few capabilities here, but we're getting at how do I start looking at this, and how do I manage all this stuff, right? And mainly when we talk about stuff, it's obviously resources in this case. So we heard from customers, among other things, but number 1, they wanted to manage their resources in a single place without having to go to multiple screens, like our classic system. There's definitely have to go across multiple screens, so we learned a lot from that, those conversations. I don't want to have to go into 15 different projects, and it's got to be intuitive. So we've given you the ability to manage resources in a single place with that resource view and investment view, and these added visualizations that I've covered just so far. I'll show you how to view and make changes to resources and their investments in just a minute, but I'm going to talk about a couple of the capabilities here. Another capability requested by customers is around kind of reducing the amount of information I'm managing at any one time so I can focus on bottlenecks, right? Depending on how large the organization is or how large my resource pool is, I may have a lot of information in front of me here. So I need a way to filter that down and focus. So filtering addresses that. We talked about that, right? I can filter my resources using Mark. So this is a controlled list. It's just Mark's resources. There's other filter criterion that I can choose to further reduce the amount of information that's in front of me at any time. But what if there's no magic filter, right? There's no business rule that you can create that really helps me focus and to fit the filter criteria that I need. So with that in mind, we've got another capability that's available, and it's a concept called pinning. So let me talk about that in a few minutes, or for a few minutes. So as you can see, I've placed a few push pins next to these resources. You can see I've got them pinned, quantity 4, right? I can add another one, 5. I can take that away. But what I've done is I want to focus on 4 resources. So I click here. Now I've limited the amount of information that's presented to me. I'm just focusing on these 4 resources. As you can see, 2 of them are over allocated during this time frame, and 2 of them have some extra time. So what I really want to do is I want to balance out these folks that are over allocated on my team. You know, if I don't want to look at this, I can just go right back and look at all of my resources. But again, we want to focus in on these 4 resources. So I've got rid of the horizontal noise, right? But I really want to focus on the over allocation spots, and specifically July, August, and September, kind of right here in the middle of the screen. So I have another capability that I want to talk to you about we call telescoping that helps me select the time frame or planning horizon that I want to focus. So before I go into telescoping, I want to talk a little bit about planning horizon. Another conversation we had with customers is that they really wanted the ability to control and configure this planning horizon. So what is the planning horizon? Well, it spans from kind of near-term focus to long-term focus. So as you can see right here, we heard that in the near term that customers want to look at it more granular. So here's an example of 4 weeks being shown. And then I kind of want to look at the next several months to see what's going on with these resources, followed by kind of longer-term planning around a quarterly perspective and an annual perspective, right? So we've given this is all configurable. You know, Mark can control his planning horizon, how many of these fiscal periods he wants to view, and types like weeks, months, quarters, and years at any one time. So that's configurable. So let's open up our telescope, which is this icon up here. And what I want to do is I want to focus on July, August, and September. So what I've done is I've eliminated all the resources that I don't want to look at for now. I've eliminated all the kind of period that I don't want to look at now, and really got my planning horizon locked down. So let's take a look at what's going on with Alex and Carl and Lee and Matt. So I can see what each of these individuals are doing for this particular time. I can see, so what I want to do here is I want to kind of eliminate the redness and get it back to even so that in particular, you know, Alex is not overburdened during this time frame. Oh, and by the way, these thresholds, you know, this is a 1.2 FTE. You control the threshold that you want to, you know, manage. So when does someone become over allocated? When does someone become under allocated? You control that via simple configuration in our settings area. All right. So we've got we got these opened up, so we know what each of these resources are working on. I can see that all 4 of these folks are working on the international trade show right here. So let's kind of do some load balancing here. I've got this is an area, I've got the permission, and what I can do here is I can make some changes. So I'm looking at August right here, right? So I'm going to change Alex from his current allocation. I've got to drop that down to give him some more time here. So I'm going to bump that down. At the same time, I'm going to increase Matt on the same one for up to 5. So I'm kind of reducing some allocation there, freeing up some resource. The other thing I want to do is I'm going to look at Matt on the team board, and he's at 0.25. I'm going to bump him up to 40.4%, and I can just copy and paste and put that there. Use some Excel-like capabilities. So if there were more rows here or columns, I could just cut it or paste across the rows. I'm also going to update Alex here on the team board from his 40.4 to a 0.25 allocation to just kind of streamline him and get that set up, copy, paste, and boom. So look what I've done. I've just wiped out the over allocation that was associated with those 2 resources, and I've solved my problem here. So Mark was able to focus, resolve those resource bottlenecks, given that reduced number of resources and that specified planning horizon. I would continue to do the same thing for Lee to solve his over-allocation, but in the interest of time, we'll kind of leave him alone at the moment. So I'm going to come back to, all resources. I'm going to go back to my telescope and bring that back into the complete time frame and click out of there. I'm also going to bring back my role request pane, so we're back at kind of all resources. So what I've shown there is I've got a single place to manage my resources, view their allocations, remove bottlenecks using filters, pinning, and telescope capabilities that are afforded to me. Pretty cool. So let's switch gears a little bit here. I'm still going to stay in as Mark, but I'm going to come here to, I'm going to switch up in the upper left here to the investment perspective. So this is the exact same information, but it's just organized looking at it from a group by investment, if you will. And here I have Dana is a filter that I put in place as a project manager, investment manager. So these are all, again, all the projects that Dana is responsible for, and I'm going to manage some of her resources. I'm going to help her out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Eclipse. I can see all the resources that are allocated to this particular project, right? And again, this view is controlled by security. So you completely manage who has access to what information through standard security administration. So what I want to do here is I'm going to add staff to this project. So I'm going to add resources or roles. So what I do is on this particular investment, I'm going to add people. I can just select resources. I can type B, it starts bringing in all the resources. I can fine tune this down to Ben. I can pick a particular resource. Or what I really want to do is I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to add a QA role. There it is. I want to add a QA role in this particular investment. I've done that. You see it refreshes. The QA has been dropped in. I'm going to close that out. Default allocations are applied. That's a configuration per the system. So this is a full-time, 1 FTE that you're adding for this particular time frame. So what I can do here is I'm going to adjust that allocation. I don't want that full-time QA person. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to bring out the flyout that we've seen before. And you can see the allocation percentage right here is at 100%. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that to 50. I have control over that. So I'm going to make that change. And you can see that now reflects across the board here for that QA role. Again, some icons. This time icon, that's an indicator that Carl has submitted time for this particular investment. So he's underway and recording time for that particular investment. So one more thing, up until this point, we've been talking about, FTE. I've got my ability to look at FTE here. Alternatively, I can look at this in terms of hours. I just come into my settings area that's afforded to Mark, and I choose hours. While I'm here, we talked about that configurable planning horizon. This is where Mark configures his view. How many of those fiscal period types that he wants to see across his planning horizon, just as a side. Okay, so I'm going to close. Oh, and also the configuration for kind of over and under allocation is configured here as well. So I've changed this from FTE, and now I'm looking at all of my allocations. I'll expand Eclipse again here in terms of hours. How many hours are dedicated? How many hours is Barb working on this per fiscal period? Make sense? So I added that role. I got the QA person on there. I've changed the default allocation. I've changed it from FTE to hours via the setting option. The other thing I can do here is I can start looking at costs, as a resource manager, I can start looking at costs associated with project allocations. So how do I do that? How do I see how much it's costing me for Barb for this particular investment in the month of June, for example? So all I do is come up here and click forecast. So the forecast rate does not draw upon the rate matrix right now. That remains an enhancement on our product roadmap. So one thing I want to do is I want to open up the QA role. Where did I put that? Streamline processes. I have, oh, apologize. I'm having a brain senior moment here with my, oh, there's my role. Great. So I'm going to click on this role. And in terms of forecast, maybe I need a lower cost QA resource for this particular investment just to kind of monitor my costs. So there's my forecast rate that was entered at the time, but I'm going to take that down a notch so I can look at what impact that actually has on my costs. So the system updates and presents based on availability and whatnot creates that. So this is a more advanced feature. Doesn't have to be used. This can be enabled by security. So if there are certain processes in your organization that you want to limit exposure of this capability to your users, you simply do not enable it. It's that simple. If you want to turn it on for particular users, you can do that. All right, so I'm going to take this forecast off. I'm going to go back to my settings and go to FTE and bring that back. And so now I'll go back to the resource view. And so just kind of summarizing the particular capabilities afforded here in staffing, it's a single location to manage resources and their investments, to view the information, to look at bottleneck, to look at areas of opportunity and understand where there are bottlenecks, and then actually make adjustments, make changes that you need to do to manage your team or manage those resources so they are not overburdened or underworked, if you will. So I'm going to do a couple things here. I'm going to move to a new capability that was just introduced in our last release. So I'm going to jump back into the project area. I'm going to switch, and I'm going to kind of log out and come back in as Dana. Oops, spelled right. Dana. And I'm landing on my projects, right? We started here. So these are all the projects for which Dana is responsible. And I'm going to go into one project here. Now, before I go a little bit further, customers have given us a great deal of feedback on the staffing capabilities that I just went through, and they wanted to have that type of capability in the modern UX and in the context of an individual project. So staffing is kind of the global area where you have access to all resources and all projects, and of course filtering or permissions kind of control what you have access to, like I've said a number of times. But what I'm going to show you now is in the modern UX, we've added some staffing capability in the context of a single project. So I've navigated into Eclipse enhancements as an individual project. Across the top, and forgive me if some of you are familiar with this capability, these are modules or capabilities that are provided to projects through our blueprinting capability. So you control, as the administrator, you control what types of capabilities are afforded to your users through blueprinting, right? So staff is a new module that's available in the blueprints to be deployed to your projects. So let's go into that. This is the same information that we were just looking at in the staffing area, but again, in the context of an individual project, Eclipse enhancements. This is taking on some of the grid capability that you're starting to see throughout the product in risk decision changes, road mapping, financials, the personal portal or the My Task List. So this grid is a common capability that's being applied to different parts of the product. What I can do here as Dana, now I'm the project manager, right? One of the things I want to do is kind of staff. I want to staff roles and resources. So same capability that we had before in staffing is afforded here. I should say that, you know, I've staffed the QA role, right? That one didn't get replaced yet by a particular user. But if I want to replace that role request with an actual person, in this current release, navigate over to Workspace, the staffing workspace, perform that function, and you're done. We are adding the ability to replace resources right from here in an upcoming release. You noticed here that we can add resources and roles, just like in staffing, but we're also adding the ability to add team, which is a whole other concept that I want to keep you, make you think about that's coming in a subsequent release. But I'm just focusing right now on current capabilities. The other thing that's here for me is, well, we talked about staffing. In the staffing area, it was focused on the allocation model, right? You'll see here additional columns for ETCs or actuals. I can use the grid here to organize how I want to see these columns. There's a column panel here that you're starting to see throughout the application that allows me, Dana, to control what I see in my view here across projects. So I've added a number of fields here already. I want to add default allocation. All right, we talked about changing that default allocation for that QA resource that was automatically allocated 100%. Well, I'm going to do that here for Grace Thomas. She's got a 20% allocation that we changed earlier. I'm going to bump that up to 50% allocation, and that does impact the allocation. These fields aren't editable. You edit it through here, the percentage. So, like I said, there's a number of capabilities here for you to bring in more information. If you're looking at ETCs and you don't want to look at allocations, you can certainly do that and just manage this project using ETCs. A lot of cool capabilities to bring in default move that over, hide and show particular columns. If I want to actually confirm Tara as a user, as a hard book, I can do that right here because I do have those permissions. So again, I've got here a lot of capabilities now afforded to me from a staffing perspective right here in the context of the project. A couple of things are coming. We're not done. Like I mentioned, we're talking about replacing roles and resources directly from here, being able to staff teams. Team is essentially a resource, so you would staff the team crushers, and the allocation information, et cetera, would show up for that collection of individuals that are part of that team. That implies there's the ability to build a team, so that's coming. Another thing is saving views. Much like other parts of the product, Dana may configure this to look exactly like the way she wants it for a given project, and she wants to save that view, and so that she can return to it and have the same perspective each time. Another element that's coming, like you saw in staffing, there was that planning horizon available to you in terms of per period metrics. So that's also something that's on the roadmap for this particular area as well, to bring in that the allocation, how is it divvied up across the duration of this particular project from May through October. All right, so that concludes the information I wanted to cover today from a staffing perspective, both within the staffing workspace, being able to focus as a resource manager, using tools that are afforded to you like filtering, pinning, telescoping, and the Excel-like capabilities to make those updates for which you have permission. And I also showed you here in the context of an individual project, the new staffing capability that's available now and talk a little bit about some of the things that are coming. So at that point, I guess I'll turn this over to you, Chris, to see if we've got any questions.
Yeah, Dave, you might want to exit your screen share and look at the Q&A. There's quite a few.
Oh boy, okay. Okay, let me go into here.
Which means that everyone's very interested.
Options.
Just go to the top of your screen and a drop-down should come down, and you can stop sharing.
So, oh, it's okay, yeah. I mean, do you see the Q&A? Am I showing it live here?
No. Do you see the Q&A? You see it? Okay.
I do. I see it, yep. And will there be audio? Uh-oh. Was there not?
That was taken care of.
Okay, great. Boy, that's scary. Okay, so you took care of that. Oh, all right. So staff OBS. So I think that, let me take that one from Dale. And if I don't answer it, Dale, we can certainly talk offline. The right here, you'll have the ability to search using just individual resources. You can search roles by named roles, and then the team area will be by team name. I don't have the ability here to kind of staff by OBS, but what we did find in our research when we were doing our team feature requirement definition, a lot of companies organize their teams or groups of people by staff OBS. So in the team administration area, which I'm not showing today, there is the ability to create that team using an OBS. So you do grab all of those individuals and pop them into a team very quickly, name that team, and then in the future, team will be available here as a mechanism to staff. Hope I got to that question answered correctly. Then, so since we're treating and kind of talking more about future capabilities here, since team is kind of articulated as a resource from a system perspective, not only I'm staffing a team as a resource, if you will, I can then use that, I can assign tasks to teams. I can enter time for teams, and then that flows right through to our cost plans. Since team is a resource, a team becomes an entry in the cost plan. So hopefully that answers your question. Where is the quick start tab from Galen Coolidge? I don't know.
Yeah, I got that already. Yep.
I'm sorry. Okay. All right. All right. So the question here is about the classic versus new user experience on staffing that we just showed. All right. So what we did was evaluating the classic from a staffing perspective. Over in this part of the application, there's a number of screens that the individual resource manager would have to navigate to comprise or obtain this information. So we're leveraging the information that's available in staffing today, but we've reinvented it and presented it in a different user experience. So that's what you're seeing here. So it's leveraging all the information that's available from a classic perspective. If you make edits in the classic experience, it shows up here. If you make edits here, it shows up in the classic experience. So the information is not disconnected, and you can work in both. All right, when I try to filter the role request by resource manager, no list pops up. So is there special setup? Yeah. So you need to have particular access rights to view those individual resources. So that's a configuration thing that I suggest you can focus and work on with the support organization. Tim is saying we just upgraded to 15.4, and we have decided to use either soft or hard booking. I guess that's been changed in 15.4.1. Yes, maybe I wasn't clear enough. I was just saying that sometimes organizations either use, hard booking. They don't even bother with soft booking. So in other words, you just give people the right to book a named user on a particular project, and it's a hard book. And it's oftentimes they don't want that behavior, so they give permissions to, if you're going to go add a named person, a named resource to a project, that it only goes in as a soft book, and then therefore there's a process where the resource manager is able to review that, like right here, and make that determination of, yep, looks like Alex has time, and they can go ahead and convert that. So it's a process thing. It's the same behavior between 15.4 and 15.4.1. Eric was asking, can we add investments to resources in this view? Yeah, so right here, I'm in the resource to investment view, so I can click plus, and I can search for investments, and then I can allocate an investment to Alex through this front. So it's kind of converse of, it's the opposite of, I'll close that, we're in the investment area, and we said I'm going to add a resource or a role to this investment, right? So it's flipped. Hopefully that answers your question. So the answer is yes. What version of PPM is this again? Yeah, I'm showing you 15.4.1, which was released in the first part of June, just last month. Is it possible to show multiple projects in the staffing board view? Right, so the staffing board view. I'm assuming you're talking about here, you're in a project, and I've got a board view. These are tasks, so this is just individual projects. The board view, so one thing, let's see, let me close this out of the way here. Let me go back here. There's another area of the product called My Tasks. So that is dedicated to those individuals, and this particular, I have it here, yeah. My Tasks is really a grid view of all the tasks that me and Dana as an example, if I were to select that, would show all of the tasks that I'm assigned to that cut across multiple projects. So I have a centralized area to go look at all of my tasks that I'm assigned to, regardless of project. Now I say all that because a board view is planned for that as well. So you as a user, an individual user, can look at that and manage all the tasks that you're responsible for in the context of a board. Now it's not necessarily dedicated to a user. If you can go in and as a manager and search for all the tasks that people that you manage are responsible for. So it's got some flexibility there, but hopefully that answers your question as far as multiple projects in a board view. Catherine, send us a link. Yep, it'll come for all people that registered. Version, limit the project to best. So we're talking about the differentiation of managing projects versus ideas or assets or products or other investment types. The answer is yes. This is limited to. Actually, I take that back. Sorry. I'm going to go into staffing. I'm going to grab an investment type, and there it does support more than just projects. So there, that support that. So you can bring in other investment types that you would like to look at your resources and how they're allocated. Okay, here, mixed booking, yes, that's a current limitation. It's either hard or soft booking. There is no mixed bookings. That is a roadmap item. I'm glad someone brought that up, Julie. We are looking at that. For example, I've got, Alex is dedicated to a particular project through, for this time frame he's booked. I may convert that to soft. Well, here's an example. I'll say here, he's soft booked right here. I can convert that to hard book either way. He'll be on the project for, that span. Now I may want to say, I actually need Alex for 2 more months, so I should be able to come in here and soft book. If I want to. So that's the notion of mixed booking. And so we're looking at that and how do we support that going forward. But it's not going to happen in the next release, I can tell you that. Can allocations be adjusted through the life of the project? Yes. As long as you have permission to do that, you can set, for example, I've got Alex Bergman right here on this at 0.15 and 0.15 and 0.4. So let me copy that, and I'm going to go right here and change it. So I've just changed the allocation, and I put them into an over allocation state, but that may be a decision you want to work. But that answers it's not a good example because it threw them into an over allocation, but it does address your question there about changing the allocation for the remainder of the project. Resource allocations change task durations. No. A task assignment is independent of an allocation because a task will actually drive actuals, and so that's how you would be comparing your allocation versus actuals. John, how are we doing on time here? Good, I think. John, I'm looking to add a role with a staff OBS to assign the unnamed resource allocation to a team. So I think I mentioned that with Dale's question about using staff OBS as a means to find someone. So I can't do that right now in the context of the modern UX. Our business process requires RMs to only hard book, not PMs. So again, that's all done through permissioning on how you orchestrate that. So I suggest you work with your in-house experts or services folks or even the support organization. Does this work for booking managers too? So if a person is called a booking manager by role in your organization, yes, you simply give them similar type permissions of what you would like them to be able to do. Question from Sandy, if a team is assigned to a project, again, this is futures, does everyone on that team get the same allocation? Actually, a team is treated as a single entity. So you basically assign the team to a project. And again, this is future, which we can certainly talk about offline, Sandy, if you want to reach out to me. We can have a conversation about it, but it's just treated like an individual resource. So it's not like we're giving, the 10 people that are on that team an allocation. It's the team that gets the allocation. Instead of seeing allocations, can we see the planning of staff related of task assignments? So the staffing area is all about the allocation model, allocation methodology. So the answer is no. But from a staff perspective, you can look at that in multiple ways, whether it's ETCs, allocations, actuals, or EACs. Sandy, if a resource is removed from the team, does that clear out the allocations assigned to that resource? So it's kind of a mixed question there. So again, this is future capabilities. Constructing a team, you identify how many people you want on that team. You articulate how much of their time is dedicated to that team. For example, you may have a UX designer, or even better yet, a senior architect that you want to spread across multiple teams, so you would allocate them 25%, if you will, to 4 teams. That allows you to allocate them to multiple teams, and that really drives the availability of the team itself, the entire team. But if you take a person off a team, yes, their availability does drop. Doesn't change the allocation because you still said, I want this team at 0.5, 0.5 FTE. That does, when you take someone off of that, it doesn't change. It just affects their overall availability. What does it mean when a resource is pinned? So as I was talking about, it allows me to focus. So I've got 4 resources here, right, that I just want to focus on them. Boom, and I go into the pinned area, and the page reflects only those pinned people. If I want to remove Alex, I take him out. I just take him out of the equation, this scenario, and I don't look at him as a 4th resource. So pinning is just a way for you to focus on individual resources. And again, I can just go right back to all if I want. And as you saw, I can remove and add that pin, whether I'm in looking at all resources or pin resources. Okay. Okay, we wanted to do what if team planning doing drag and drop. Right. So the drag and drop capability is not afforded as a kind of a UX metaphor here. Maybe we can talk about how you see that as being helpful in what you're trying to do, Dan. Feel free to follow up. Talk about Tim. Staff will be yes. We need to have more conversation. I'm not going to look for it and add a resource to a team. All right. So, John, I definitely would love to have follow-up with you on this conversation. Hello. Can we tie resource planning? This is from Catherine in the PPM tool to work being done in Adult Central. We are looking at how we to answer your question directly, we're looking at that as a roadmap, product roadmap item, and in particular team. Since team is a construct that's coming in PPM, it's a known entity in Agile Central. There is some ongoing discussions right now of how to leverage the fact that teams exist in both situations. So we're working on that as we speak. All right. Chris, I got to the end. I may have done justice to most of the questions and not done justice to some, but I encourage those that would like follow-up to reach out. I'm not sure if my email address was on the meeting invite. I saw Bob is still on there, but we'll go from there. One last question from, oh, actually,
go ahead.
I don't know if I can type it in there and send it to everyone real quick, but I see one more question. On a project, does staff replace the team dev in Classic? The answer to that is yes. It doesn't replace it, so to speak. It brings it forward into the modern UX in a different construct because the Teams tab still exists in Classic with its capabilities. The key thing there is team administration is only afforded in the modern UX. Once that team is constructed, like I said, it's a resource, and so it flows into Classic and the modern UX. I'm going to put my contact information.
I did put your email address in there for the person asking for the contact information.
Okay, great. And maybe
and for John, I did put a link in for the roadmap, future roadmap sessions as an opportunity to explore further what he was asking.
Yeah, thanks. Looks like we used the hour pretty efficiently.
Right at the top. Well, thank you, Dave. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. This seemed like a very good session. So I'm just going to wish everybody a great rest of your meeting. Will be up in the next couple of days, and everyone who attended will get a link and an email to the recording as well.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye now.